So we are continuing our discussion on this Mahabharata. I think last time I mentioned a few things about the great man who wrote this book, that is the great sage Vyasa. Vyasa's greatest contribution is not actually Mahabharata. In fact, his greatest work, his greatest contribution to world civilization or Indian philosophy was his division of the Vedas into 4 groups. It is believed that in the ancient times there was just one Veda, which Vyasa divided into 4 groups. He classified them into 4 groups. One is Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharvaveda. And he selected 4 of his great disciples as custodians of these 4 Vedas. So it is believed that he taught Rigveda to one sage with the name Paila, and Samaveda to Jaimini, Yajurveda to Vaishambhayana, and Atharvaveda to Sumantu. But this is the significance of his name. Vyasadhadu means somebody who edits or classifies the Vedas. Now, I already mentioned in my last session some of his special characteristics. So this is one of the underlying principles in Mahabharata. One is Dharma, and the other one is how Dharma becomes the regulating principle of human civilization. And if you read Mahabharata and also if you read commentary by Nilakanta, Nilakantiya commentary, it is the only complete commentary on Mahabharata. Nilakanta was a great sage, a scholar, originally from the central provinces or Maharashtra maybe, and he lived in Benares, Varanasi in the 17th century. And he was the one who wrote the only one existing complete commentary on Mahabharata. His name is Nilakanta. There are other commentaries, but this is the only complete commentary on Mahabharata and the most well known among them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one is Dharma. The other is how Dharma acts or manifests as karma. These are 2 important things. So, karma and dharma. Dharma may be roughly defined as a regulating principle working behind human actions, human activities, or should be the regulating principle, moral, ethical principle. That should be the foundation of our thoughts, actions, and our life as a whole. And karma is practical manifestation, visible manifestation. So, I think I made quoted one important verse from the Mahabharata. Yatha mataram vatsaha sagasreshu abhi vatsakaha avindat gacchati tatha karmano apragarida phalam. Very famous statement in the Mahabharata. So, just as a calf finds its own mother among thousands of cows, similarly, our karma will follow us. I mean, the results and the consequences of what we do will follow us from life to life, life cycle to life cycle. So, the belief in the doctrine of karma and the continuation of human existence, I mean, the belief in rebirth or reincarnation, these are all important principles embedded in the Mahabharata philosophy. So you can find to the end of this great classic. That's why it is remembered so much. There are long dialogues, discussions and debates on why certain things happen in this world and how and why we should do certain things. So the ultimate principle, regulating principle is Dharma. But Dharma has a close link with these cause-effect interaction or sequence. That is, whatever we do, we will have to suffer or enjoy accordingly. And surprisingly, you find, and this is very important from a historical point of view, anthropological, sociological point of view, this affects not only individuals, it also affects or it has an impact on human civilizations, human cultures. This is very important. So, human races, cultures, and civilizations are also not immune from this principle of karma and its result. So, it's a very famous statement. Yatha mataram vatsaha, sahasreshu api vatsaha. So, suppose there are thousands of cows, cattle in front of us, and you bring one small little calf, and this little animal, calf, will immediately spot and identify its own mother from among thousands, maybe tens of thousands of cows. Why does it happen? Because there is an individual, at the micro level, there is a inseparable link between action and its results. It's a very, very important point that you find in Mahabharata. So that's why in the last session, I was trying to discuss Yaksha Prashna. Yaksha Prashna is very significant. 125 questions that one divine being, celestial being, you may call him an angel if you want. He may be in modern terms, like an angel. He put these 125 questions to Yudhishthira. Now, Yudhishthira is an interesting character. Remember, Yudhishthira was not a perfect character in Mahabharata. The only perfect character, somebody who may be called, somebody who may attain perfection in human attributes, may be Lord Krishna. Because Lord Krishna hardly ever makes a mistake. He is like a son, humble child before suffering mothers. An affectionate brother when he is approached to help women talk. And he is like God himself to those who are praying to him for the protection. And is absolutely merciless while dealing with terrible monsters. And extremely compassionate, even when he is not prayed to, even when nobody approaches him, he is naturally compassionate and he lends his protective hands to everyone. It's a very interesting character. Krishna is always smiling and he never regrets, he never scolds anyone, and he never thinks twice. He acts according to Dharma. That's a famous prayer that one of our friends requested me to explain. It's a famous prayer in Mahabharata. Pibada santuna shashwat yatra yatra jagadguru bhavado darshanam yat syat apunar bhava darshanam. A very, very interesting statement. You can see a humble woman, a mother of the Pandavas. Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna, the three sons of Kunti. So Kunti was their mother, born the first wife of Pandu. And he had another wife, their Madri. Madra Desha was somewhere in what may be called Sindh or maybe in what is now called Pakistan. That place was called Madra Desha in Mahabharata times. And today's Punjab, which is part of India, Haryana, and also the Punjab, which is part of Pakistan, which will be called Panchala Desha. So, Pandava's wife Draupadi was the daughter of the king of Panchala Desha. He called Panchali or Draupadi. It's called Drupada, the name of the king. So, coming to the subject, Yudhishthira represents a very interesting character. Well versed in scriptures, extremely intelligent, far reaching, intelligent, intelligence and wisdom. What you call wisdom is a very important thing. Wisdom is not intelligence. Wisdom is a higher quality of a human being. Wisdom implies, according to Mahabharata, the ability to manage properly your own intellectual resources. So intelligence, knowledge, skills, all this, where they should be handled properly according to Dharma. That faculty is called wisdom. So I gave this the story, the interesting story in the Mahabharata, Yaksha Prashna. The 5 brothers were traveling in a thick forest, and suddenly a great sage appeared in front of them, and he said, and he was performing a Vedic sacrifice, and he wanted to lit fire. Arani, 2 pieces of stone or maybe wood. They used to rub together to create fire in ancient times for the Homa fire, sacrificial fire. And it was taken away by a deer. It got trapped in the horns of a deer, so it ran away. And they followed the deer to reclaim it, to retrieve it, and they reached a pond, a lake, and there was a crane standing there, and the crane began to speak to them. And first of all, one of the younger brothers, Nagula or Sakadeva, one of them went and tried to drink water because they were very thirsty. They were searching for a place, for a pond or a source of water for drink in thick forest. And he was about to drink the water from the lake, and immediately the crane spoke. So it was not a crane actually, it was a celestial being, as we are going to find out. It's called Yaksha. Yaksha is maybe some kind of a supernatural being, a celestial being, like an angel, as we call in Christian theology, in the New Testament. An angel, a divine being. He took the form of a crane and began to test the wisdom of the 5 Pandavas. So he told the younger Pandava, look here, you cannot take the water like that. You have to first ask my question. You should first answer my questions. I'm going to put some questions to you, you should answer them. So he said, okay. But then the younger brother, one of the youngest brothers of Pandava, didn't agree, and he went ahead and drank water. So Nakula and Sakadeva, both of them fell unconscious. Nakula was the elder son of Madri, and Sakadeva was the younger. But they were twins actually, Nakula and Sakadeva. So both the brothers fell unconscious because they didn't have the patience to listen to the questions put by the crane, by the celestial being. Finally, Arjuna went. Arjuna also, who fell unconscious, he didn't care to listen to the questions of the crane. And Bhima, he also met with the same fate. Finally, Yudhishthira comes. So here you can see a different kind of a person. Yudhishthira found that these 4 brothers were lying dead on the shores of the lake, apparently dead. There's no reason because they were great warriors. It's not easy to defeat them. So he understood there should be some mystery behind. Now Mahabharata, in the commentator, Nilakanta and others says, this is one line of demarcation between a normal human being who may be driven by pride and egoism. Both Bhima, Arjuna and other 2 brothers, they were very proud of their own powers. They were warriors. So they didn't care to listen to the sounds coming from a crane after all. So they fell unconscious. But Yudhishthira was a different person. He stood there, he watched, and he listened. So he understood it's not a crane actually. A crane cannot speak higher philosophy, even in Mahabharata times. Suddenly the crane, he understood it was not crane, it was the Yaksha. He came in the real form. So Yudhishthira, yes, please, I'm ready to answer your questions. He didn't try to ignore him. All right, please ask questions. So question one after another, 125 questions are asked, which is a very important part of this Mahabharata. To give an example of the kind of higher wisdom, or you may call it higher common sense, that you find in the scripture. For example, the crane asked this question, the Yaksha asked the question, Ko modade kim asharyam kapantha kacha vartiga vadame chodare prasnan muda jivantu bantavaha. Who is the one who actually enjoys? What is the greatest mystery? What's the way out of problems? What's the greatest news? Now answer these 4 questions. Some of these questions may not be very profound apparently, but one question is what's the greatest wonder? Now what did he mean by wonder? Something that we all know to be a fact, but we are not able to use that knowledge as common sense. That's a commentary. Ahanni bhudani gachantiha Himalayam seshaha sthavaram ichchandi kim asharyam atapparam. Atapparam kim asharyam. What greater wonder, what greater mystery can there be in this world than this? What is this? Every day, every minute, Bhudani means born beings, beings which are born, anything that is born, insects, animals, human beings, all these, they die. If you look at, you can see the wisdom behind the question. There is not one fraction of a minute when some animal, some insect, some human being, somebody is not leaving this world. You can see, impossible. But the point is, and as I mentioned, even a crematorium manager, somehow he wants to believe in his heart of hearts that he is going to survive everything. Now, that's the only reason why human beings are able to live in this world. On the one hand, we all know that every day, every minute, people are dying, animals are dying, different living beings are dying. But if you always remember that we are also going to face the same fate, if we remember it all the time, then we won't be able to live, we won't be able to have the optimism, we won't be able to have the strength, we won't be strong enough to live in this world. We won't be able to live in this world if you always remember this, that we are not eternal, we are also going to die. It's a fact everyone knows, nobody can deny it. It's so as true as the sun rising in the east. We can deny it. But at the same time, this is something that we have to forget to remain alive in this world. To plan our life, our actions, our programs, all these we do, thinking somewhere in a corner of our heart that these things are going to last for long. But if you analyze, we know it is not. But that knowledge is forgotten when people quarrel, when they become greedy, when they do harm to each others, when they compete, when they give their entire life, all their efforts gone waste just to make money which they know is not going to last long. This happens. So like that, we think we are eternal. That is, Seshaha sthavaram ichchandi. Sesha means those who are the rest of the people. People die, but those who are alive, those who are living, they think that they are going to remain eternal. Nothing will happen to them. What greater mystery can there be? This is one. And another one, which I referred to earlier, this is a long commentary, the Tarko Apardishta Sudayo Vibhinna naiko rishirasya padam pramanam dharmasi tattvam nihidam guhayam mahajano yena gadassa pantha. Now, you can find that everyone wants to live by certain principles. Constitution, morality, ethics and so on. But actually constitution or morality or ethics can be very, very diverse, can be very elastic, can be interpreted in so many different ways. Even in the Mahabharata itself, I mentioned earlier, the greatest villain of Mahabharata is Duryodhana. And he himself has his own justification for all the terrible things that he did. His justification is this. He knows little bit of Vedanta. So he says, the divine spark is within me. So, he says, Janami dharmam nachame pravritti, janami adharmam nachame nivritti. I know dharma, but I cannot practice it. I know adharma, the opposite of dharma. I cannot desist from doing it. I cannot resist myself, my own temptation to practice adharma. And then he says, Yatha Rishikesha Hridisthidena Yatha Niyuktosmi Tatha Karomi. God is living in the hearts of everyone, also in my heart. So addressing Rishikesha. So just as the Antaryami, the indweller, the divine spark within me is prompting me, accordingly I do. So I do all these terrible things. This is what Duryodhana says. Just like Hitler getting a wonderful attorney, a constitutional expert. He can have his own justifications. So you can find, then what's the way out? That's the most important point. That's why it says, Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gata sapantha. What is dharma? What is morality? What is ethics? As I mentioned, constitutional propriety. The constitutional propriety could be different and distinct from ethical propriety or moral propriety or spiritual propriety. What is spiritually all right may not be constitutionally acceptable. What is constitutionally acceptable may not be spiritually or ethically defensible. This often happens. So, if you take both these contrasting interpretations of morality and ethics, the constitutional and ethical, the legal and the moral or dharmic. So, Yudhishthira says, there is only one way. Let us watch how great and good men do things. That's the only way. And watch and try to practice things as they do and try to follow their footsteps. Try to imitate them in that respect. Try to learn our lessons from the great actions of great men who are acknowledged to be practitioners of dharma, ethics. That's the only way to understand dharma, because dharma is very subtle. So here I hope there you find in the discussions the constitutional, ethical and moral and spiritual. The only way to be in the right side of spirituality and ethics is to follow the examples of great men and great women. And then I'm going to give a few more examples here. So Yaksha says, Vyakhyada me tuya prasna yadha tathyam parantava purusham tu idanim vyakhyahi yascha sarvadhani naraha. He asks, sarvadhani means a man who is rich, wealthy in all respects, sarvadhani. So, Yaksha, the divine being, is very happy when he discovered Yudhishthira's wisdom and intelligence. So I want to make a few remarks in this context, talking about Yudhishthira. Now, Yudhishthira is in one way different from an artificial creation of a good person. So I shall explain this, Suppose you want to create, after this is a literary classic, Mahabharata is a literary classic. Based on history, there is certainly a strong element of history in Mahabharata, because the places where Mahabharata took place were excavated, and there have been historical proofs for such an incident, which must have taken place somewhere maybe 3200 BC. That's roughly the date accepted by many of the historians and other archaeological experts. So there is certainly an element of history, but again it is a classical literary, it's a literary classical literature. So one may ask this question, is Yudhishthira is a perfect character? In the Yaksha Prashna it comes. No. If Yudhishthira was designed to be a perfect human being, he would be totally useless for humanity. He would be an utter failure. If a literary artist, a novelist, tries to create a perfect, 100% infallible human character without any mistake, either it will be a piece of stone, a granite statue, or it will be absolutely like air, which doesn't have a visible concrete form. To understand this, you can turn to another world of literature. Dostoevsky's The Idiot, Prince Mishkin. Dostoevsky wanted to create a perfect human being. But Mishkin is not remarkable for any kind of intelligence. He is certainly a good person. Now, in the Mahabharata, there is a statement, goodness without strength is useless, and strength without goodness is dangerous. It is evil. So let us just imagine, Yudhishthira had his own follies actually. Yudhishthira was not, he didn't have the dynamism, and he didn't have the efficiency to act according to the situations. For example, his own inaction when the most heinous crime was being committed in the Kaurava court against his own wife, and in the name of Dharma, he kept quiet. One example. So Yudhishthira is not like Prince Mishkin. Unfortunately, there have been comparisons in some critical studies. Prince Mishkin is so good that people didn't like him. You find to the end of the Idiot, he goes back to the lunatic asylum from where he came. He was hosted by a great general and aristocratic family. He was distantly related. But in their company, he goes through different experiences. That the story is all about, the Idiot. But then finally, so Dostoevsky is, Prince Mishkin is a failed Christ. He wanted to create a character who is as Christ-like as possible, as an artist can conceive of. The result was, it became a farce. Yudhishthira, on the other hand, has a strong sense of morality, wisdom, but he also makes mistakes. That's why Yudhishthira is a greater character, really. Because Dostoevsky's Mishkin is so artificial that such a person cannot exist in this world. Such a character, no one can be so absolutely humble, guileless, innocent, and then continue living in this world. Because no one can do that. No one can afford to be so humble, so innocent, so guileless, so free from any conceivable human follies, and then live a normal life in this world? Impossible. So it is such an artificial. But Yudhishthira is a very, very lively character. Why? Because he makes mistakes. So you find out, that's what you find in Mahabharata, that we will deal with those parts of Mahabharata later. But in the Yaksha Prashna, the Yaksha puts another question, there's a 100th question. What is the highest wealth? The greatest wealth, the greatest asset that you can obtain in this world. Divam sprishadi bhumim cha shabda punyena karmana ya vatsa shabdo bhavadi tavat purusha uchyade. Tulli priya priye yasya sukha-dukkhe tathaiva cha adidanagade chobhe savai sarvadhani naraha. So he says, punyena karmana shabda, divam sprishadi bhumim cha shabda punyena karmana. The reputation, the glory of good deeds. Suppose you have done some good deeds in this world, some good actions, an act of compassion, nobility, charity, hospitality, you do in this world. That will be your highest virtue, that will be your highest wealth. And that will reach, there's a statement here, that will reach not only in this world but also in heaven. That's literal meaning. But the point is, savai sarvadhani naraha. So the highest virtue, the highest wealth, the highest accomplishment, the highest form of riches you can think of is the good name that you acquire as a result of good deeds, acts of compassion, charity, broad-mindedness and kindness. Why? Because tulli priya priye yasya sukha-dukkhe tathaiva cha. So what happens? A person for whom priya apriya, sukham dukkham, all, and then what has gone and what is yet to come, all he treats equally. In other words, what is dear to him and what is unpleasant to him, what brings happiness and what brings unhappiness, what is yet to come, what has already happened. All these when a person looks at and treats as the same, keeping the mind in perfect equanimity, whether something unpleasant happens or something pleasant happens. In spite of all that, a person who tries to do and who does succeed in doing some good actions, that action and the reputation, the good name, the goodwill that comes out of that noble action, that is the one wealth, that is the eternal checkbook and fountain pen that you can think of. This is Yudhishthira's answer. Very famous lines in Mahabharata. The one thing that we can never lose is the punya, the spiritual merit of good actions that we do in this world. That will be ours. No one can take it away from us. And Yaksha was very, very happy, absolutely happy. Now comes the 103rd. That's a very important. That is a very profound. Vyakhyada purusho rajanyascha sarvadhani naraha tasmat tumekam bhratrunam yamichhasit sajivatu. So Yaksha says, all right. In fact, this is supposed to be one of the greatest questions. What is the greatest wonder and what is the greatest wealth? The greatest wonder is that every day, every minute, every second, some creatures, some animals, some human being, somebody in this world is dying. We know that we are also going to face the same fate, maybe after 100 years, but some time in the future. But that we forget. And this forgetfulness of our own disappearance enables us to continue living in this world. And we all live under this perpetual, inescapable delusion that we are going to remain eternal. And that's behind every action of greed, every action of exploitation, every action of injustice that we do to others. Because we think that we will remain eternal, intact. That's the greatest mystery, the greatest wonder. Second most profound question, one of the important questions is, what is highest wealth? Only the consequences or the great name, the great goodwill that we create by our own good actions, not physical actions only, but good words, good behavior, whatever we acquire through good life, that's one wealth that no one can take away from. That is the eternal checkbook and bank balance. And then comes the turning point in the entire episode. Yaksha is very happy. Vyakhyada Purusho Rajan Yascha Sarvatani Naraha. I asked this most difficult question, you answered correctly, absolute 100% mark. Now, Tasmat Tumekam Bhratrunam Yam Ichchasi Sajivatu. Tasmat Tumekam Bhratrunam Yam Ichchasi Sajivatu. So you answered this question. Now I am giving you one gift in return for this wonderful wisdom that you displayed in your answers. What is this? One of your brothers can leave. So you can remember the scene, the lake, and this angel is talking, Yaksha is talking to Yudhishthira. 4 brothers are lying dead. Bhima and Arjuna are his own direct brothers. They are the children of Kunti, that Yudhishthira, his younger brother Bhima, and his younger brother Arjuna. These 3 are the sons of Kunti and of the same father, that is Pandu. The other 2, Nakula and Sahadeva. Nakula is the elder of the 2, but are twins. They are the sons of King Pandu, born to his younger wife Madri. So Yaksha is asking, you can choose one of your 4 brothers, he will leave. Then that's the last test. Here Yudhishthira says, Shyamo ya esha yaktakshu brigachari vottida vyudhorasku mahabahu nakulo yaksha jivatu. Nakula is the eldest son of Madri, Yudhishthira's stepmother. And Yudhishthira himself is the eldest son of Kunti. So, Yudhishthira says, see, I want that this Nakula should leave. He was ready to give up both Bhima and Arjuna, his own brothers. Why? Because he was the eldest brother of Kunti, the senior wife of King Pandu. So his stepmother, the second wife of his father, has 2 sons, Nakula and Sahadeva. And if he chose his own brothers, then his stepmother will have no issue, no children. So just as I am alive, so let my stepmother's elder son, Nakula, remain alive. That is the ultimate test. So you can see this profound test of trials of the highest and noblest human sentiments. Yudhishthira says, let Nakula live. And he gives a long description of Nakula's personality. That's not very important, He has red eyes, he has his dark complexion, he is very tall fellow, and like that. These are all different, attributes of descriptions of Nakula's personality. The point is, Mahabahu Nakulo Yaksha Jivadu. So he had long hands. Let Nakula remain alive. This is the last test. And here Yaksha doesn't stop there. Prayaste Bhimasenoyam Arjuno Vaparayanam Sakasma Nagulo Rajan Sapatnam Jivamichasi. Nagula. See, Yaksha says, Bhima is your own next brother. And Arjuna also is, both of them are your great supporters in the struggle against Duryodhana. Then why do you want Nakula to remain alive? Bhima is a very strong person, and Arjuna is a great warrior, and they are going to help you. This is a long discussion, is there? Vipriyaste Bhimaseno yam Arjuno vaparayanam sakasma nagulo rajan sapatnam jivamichasi. Yes, Naga Sagasrayana Desha Sankhena Vaibalam Tulyam Tam Bhimam Utsrujya Nagulam Jivamichasi. Why do you pray for the life of Nakula? Because Nakula is not your mother's son. He is the son of your stepmother. So why don't you choose one of your own direct brothers? The Yaksha is testing Yudhishthira's sense of righteousness, dharma. And then Yudhishthira says, Yudhishthira Vaja, Dharma eva hato hanti dharmo rakshadi rakshidaha tasma dharmam natyajami mano dharmo hato avadhir. This is a very, very famous, there are, if you take about 100 most important verses from Mahabharata, it's got more than 100,000 verses, this would be one of those 100 important verses. In famous, Dharma eva hato hanti. If you give up dharma, dharma will destroy you. Why? Because the dharma when you desert and give up, abandon dharma, that dharma becomes a big liability, a big death trap for you. Because human civilizations, cultures, nations, they all survive when they keep some higher principle as their soul, as the essence of their existence. This is true for great civilizations and cultures, ancient traditions. In spite of years and maybe centuries of persecution, misfortunes, certain cultures which have this vitality, that divine spark of dharma, if that is there, that light will never be put out, that light will keep burning. And that is the eternal anchor that a civilization should hold on to survive. If that hold is lost, everything is gone. So that's why dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshadi rakshitaha. If you protect that dharma, it means if you hold on to that anchor of ethical, moral principle, that could be in the form of some ancient customs, belief systems, certain things that a nation or a civilization considered to be holy, to be the life principle, then that civilization also remain eternal. On the other hand, if that culture or civilization or individual gives up that hold onto this dharma, then that dharma itself becomes the cause of destruction. Tasmad dharmam na tyajami. That's why Yudhishthira says, therefore, I can never give up dharma. I don't give up dharma. Ma no dharmo hato avathid. So, because I want to make sure that dharma doesn't destroy us because dharma will destroy us when we give up dharma. When we abandon dharma, when we give up dharma, then dharma itself becomes the cause of our destruction. Let that not happen. So, tasmat aham dharmam na tyajami, as I did. So, anyways, this is how this debate continues. There are a few more important things in this which I want to mention. So, and there are, of course, in Mahabharata, in other contexts also, there is says, apalo yadi dharma syat charido dharmachari bihi apradishthe tamasi edat jagat majjit anintiti nirvanam nacha adigachayuhu jiveyu pasujīvikām. So, this is another thing. Apalo yadi dharma syat charido dharmachari bihi. So, if dharma and action according to dharma doesn't create any positive result, then what happens is that dharma also will desert you, will abandon you, and then what happens? The human civilization, culture, everything will be destroyed. This is why at the end there is a very profound statement here. You can see that is Yaksha uvacha yasyati arthacha kamacha anrusamsyam param matam tasmate bhradara sarve jivantu bharadashabha. This is 113th line of this. Yaksha, this is the last line in this Yaksha Prashna episode. When Yaksha, this angel, found out Yudhishthira's great adherence to Dharma, when he chose his stepmother's elder son to survive, to remain alive, instead of choosing his own direct brothers. He wanted his stepmother to have one son to remain, to console her. Otherwise, what happened if he had chosen Bhima and Arjuna? His own mother will have two sons and his stepmother will have none. To avoid that, he wanted that just as his own mother as the eldest of the three brothers, and he himself will be as the son of his mother. So his stepmother also will have one child, her own son. So Yaksha, he was testing him, he was extremely happy. What happens? Yasyati arthacha kamacha anurumsamsyam paramadam. You gave more importance to dharma. That means you give more importance to dharma than artha and kama. So these are the four values: dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Moksha is the transcendental value that is for a spiritual pursuit. But dharma is something that we can never give up unless we want to be destroyed. Dharma is the foundation, the regulating principle, the life soul of our life in this world. So our efforts, our pursuit of empirical desires and for fulfilling empirical desires should never deviate from the path of dharma. So Yaksha says, you gave more importance to dharma rather than giving importance to artha and kama. Therefore, sarve bhradaraha jivantu. Therefore, let all your brothers survive. So immediately all the four brothers got up. So nobody died. So this is an important thing. So dharma becomes the cause of existence. So that's why Yudhishthira is considered to be one of the greatest characters in world literature. That he is so great because he had his own follies. He made mistakes. There are statements in the Mahabharata when Yudhishthira was questioned by his own younger brother, Bhima, and there were occasions when Arjuna also questioned him. His own wife questioned him for some of his mistakes, his inaction. So his own mother sometimes censured him for what she thought was his imbecility. In spite of all that, he displays all these superhuman qualities of heart and soul, and is an ideal person. So anyway, so I have tried to give just a broad view of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is very interesting and very significant in so many different ways. And Mahabharata, if you read critically, then you may also be free from many of the misunderstanding. To give an example, there's a lot of, I remember during the earlier sessions, people asked me questions about meat eating, West, ancient Vedic civilization. The Mahabharata, there's a statement, Rasanam Pratisamkhare Saubhagyam Anugechadi, Amisha Pratisamkhare Pasun Putramsha Vindadi. The meaning is this: when you give up, when you relinquish meat eating, then you get prosperity. Amisha Pratisamkhare, not only that, you get a lot of wealth in the form of progeny, wealth, and cattle. These are currencies of those times. Somebody who has planted a large number of cattle was going to be very rich. So you can see, so meat eating was a common practice in the Mahabharata time. So, but also Mahabharata says, if somebody gives up meat eating, that will have a great spiritual merit. That also is there. Because why I'm mentioning this, people have the wrong feeling that the Mahabharata or Vedic culture was essentially a 100% vegetarian culture. No. It was meat eating is mentioned in the Mahabharata. That's why in the verse tells you that by giving up meat eating, we are practicing ahimsa, we are practicing non-violence, and we will get a lot of spiritual merit. So unless that practice was prevalent in society, unless it was prevalent, there will be no need to mention that giving up that is a great spiritual quality. It is great merit. So you can, Mahabharata also can be a great source of information on the sociology and anthropology of ancient Vedic, Vedantic civilization. So there are many. We'll discuss later. Then we can have interaction. You are most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me through this microphone?
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
Okay. Just as a note, I'm also scanning the live YouTube for any questions there that I can ask on those people's behalf. And I see a hand up. I want to also encourage someone left behind in a previous session. That was David, to jump in at will for top of the queue because he was passed over in a previous session. Meanwhile, Sri Ram has his hand up. Please go ahead.
You mentioned that choosing the right path, to know what is dharmic, we need to acharyas would do. But is that a practical lesson we can learn? How every time we need to make a decision, you cannot go to an acharya.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody you should try to get a good example to follow. That's what you say. Is that what?
You mentioned that in answering what is dharmic.
Yeah. Mahajano yena gata sapantha. So that is true. But then, when we don't look for an example in every situation in our life, that doesn't happen, cannot happen. But the point is, if you can remember, at least if you are familiar with great men and great women, how they encountered different situations, conflicting situations, how they solved problems, that can be a good example for us to follow. It doesn't mean that every time when something we are not looking at a dictionary or encyclopedia to find out, not that way. What it means is, we will ourselves form a general idea as to what to do when we keep in mind not only the ethical principles, but more than that, or along with that, how great men who are supposed to have upheld Dharma, how they practiced. That will be a good example for us to follow. Again, tarko apradishta. Sudayo vipinna. The point is, there are so many books, so many interpretations that can be very confusing for common people. So a simple answer Yudhishthira is giving. So the best way to find out solution to a problem is to find out how great men and great women encountered or remedied those problems. That would be the best way to learn. That's what he says. Okay. And remember, technically speaking, if you read a book on ethics, and then, well, now I know all about ethics, you won't be able to practice in life situations. When you actually face a situation, what comes to your mind may be the examples of somebody, maybe your own relatives, your friends, somebody whom you respect, whom you may consider to be wise and intelligent, and you just think of how your grandfather or your elder brother, your own distant relative whom you respect and admire, how he encountered that problem. And you may try to follow that footstep. That's the only way we normally make use of what we learn. No one can really practice ethics and morality, dharma, by memorizing, by reading an entire volume. It can never happen. A book cannot really come to rescue when we are facing a situation. Memories or familiarity with people who have faced similar situations, that's what actually comes to help in real life situations. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Very profound question. Yeah.
Thank you, Swamiji. One of the questions that Yudhishthira was asked, sometimes goes by there is Smashana Vairagya. So can you talk about Smashana Vairagya?
Oh yeah, no, Smashana Vairagya. Smashana means cremation. So you may, a very worldly minded person, if one of his friends or somebody dies, immediately, he becomes a great philosopher, he becomes a man of renunciation, he becomes a spiritual wisdom. It doesn't happen like that. Yudhishthira was not such a person, not at all. Yudhishthira was a very substantial person. His was not momentary vairagya, not smashana vairagya. He was a very wise person, very wise person. And again, it looks like a living character. That's why I contrasted Yudhishthira with the holy fool, as you call it in Dostoevsky's The Idiot, Prince Mishkin. So there you can see, if you look at this character, you find it's like an artificially created ideal character. But such a character cannot live in this world and breathe oxygen and eat food and live in the midst of other human beings. That's not possible. That's why he went mad actually. And of course the novel, even if I wanted to drive home the idea, Yudhishthira is a man of ethical and moral principles and dharma. He was not an artificial creation, it's a living, very realistic creation of a character by Vyasa. Very realistic. Why is it realistic? Because he made mistakes. Human mistakes he made. Human follies. That's why his example is great.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
The point you made about ethical instruction is very interesting. And while awaiting more questions, I'm going to ask you further about that. I mean, in university settings and other instructional settings, the classes that are devoted to ethics, of course, you can't leave it out entirely, but they're wanting in terms of contextual examples. So unless you see somebody weighing all the variables, it's, shouting into the wind. It doesn't accomplish as much. And some of those examples, of course, do come from literature. And you made the point that the stories illustrate, perhaps in a less proximate way, but still an illustrative way
Yeah.
how such a character would deal with those variables.
Yeah.
And then you differentiated from Prince Mishkin, who doesn't make as many mistakes, so isn't as valuable an example.
He made only mistakes. That is another way of looking at this guy.
Oh, yeah. That's
He was a
what you said,
total
right?
failure to himself. He brought misery to himself.
Right,
So
right.
that's why. Another, what you made a very important statement, See, a great creative classical piece of classical literature is like is a mirror that you place on the face or against a civilization. You can see the entire civilization, a living and breathing civilization. You can see when you place a mirror in his front. So Mahabharata is a mirror, All great creative writings are like mirrors that you place in front of a mirror in front, you keep in front of something. It is completely reflected. It's not the same thing, but still it is not very different. It is not the same thing. A reflection is not the same thing as it reflects. But then there is an inseparable, undeniable connection. Not the same, but still not entirely different. Not different, but not the same. That's why I use the word mirror image. It's a mirror image of human civilization. That's why Yudhishthira is a very useful example. Just because he made mistakes. He was a powerful man. He himself had a lot of great qualities, but still he was a human being. Why do we know that? Because he made mistakes. That's the idea behind it.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
There's a question on YouTube. I'm concerned that it may have already been answered, but maybe there's an aspect to it that hasn't been answered. And that is, I'll read it verbatim. Can a person achieve self-realization irrespective of eating or drinking preferences? Is it possible to reach a sattvic state irrespective of those preferences?
Absolutely, it's possible. It's possible, but there is one important point that is purely from a physiological, psychological perspective. When a person eats things for which some animals have gone through terrible pain, it may affect the human mind. But then this is not the ultimate principle. It's a matter of geography, culture, and availability of things in a geographical cultural area. For example, if a great saint, a Buddhist, great Buddhist monk live in Tibet, a place like Tibet, you can't have agriculture there. Impossible. So you cannot expect a vegetarian sattvic culture to emerge in Tibet or Alaska or Siberia. Impossible. But at the same time, people living in those places may consider a meat just like mango or vegetable, things like that. Not very different. So it is our own interpretation, the way we understand it, that really matters. But it is very well acknowledged by all great spiritual teachers that at the beginning of one's spiritual life, vegetarian food may be more helpful to create a mental attitude. That may be more helpful for the development of spirituality. This again, remember, vegetarianism is absolutely not a criterion for spirituality, not at all. As many of you know, Hitler became a vegetarian towards the end of at some point in his life. He became a vegetarian. So the people can be very cruel and monstrous retaining the vegetarian habits. And whatever Christ was not a vegetarian, the parables are examples. A spiritual teacher of the world and inspired people all over the world for 2000 years. Buddha, Buddha was not a vegetarian. Many of the sages in the Mahabharata Vedic times were not. That is a misunderstanding. But remember one thing, in course of time, at least in Indian context, Indian geographical context, vegetarianism became an inseparable element of spiritual practices. I think that may be due to cultural or geographical factors, but it doesn't mean that vegetarianism or non-vegetarianism by itself is a criterion or deciding factor in spirituality. Not at all. That's what I'm talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the questioner as well. And now happily David is here to ask his question. Thank you, David.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
I a question about Duryodhana. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Which I think of him and how he met Krishna. He met an avatar, like Radu or Girish. They were bad. Like Radu would throw things at Holy Mother, and Duryodhana did all this evil kind of things. Well, in the Mahabharata, what happened to Duryodhana? Because he met an avatar, how did he die? Was he liberated? What happened to him?
No, Duryodhana was not an avatar. Duryodhana was an evil character.
He met Krishna.
He met Krishna, but there was a fight between Bhima and Duryodhana, and Duryodhana was killed in that battle. He was not liberated. Yeah. So that's true. In fact, what you said is correct. In many of the statements in the spiritual literature, you find if you have seen Krishna as an incarnation, you'll be liberated. But he did not see Krishna as Krishna. He saw Krishna in a totally different way. There are great characters in Mahabharata who saw Krishna as what Krishna was as an incarnation. Vidura, Kunti, Draupadi, even Yudhishthira. Great men and great women, even Gandhari ultimately. So many of them recognize Krishna's greatness, but not Duryodhana. They didn't do that. Yeah, so that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Because even Radu, because she
Yeah.
I remember at the end of her life, she called on Holy Mother.
Yeah.
I heard a Swami say that at the end of her life,
Yeah.
he was talking to Holy Mother
Yeah.
last words. So even though she mistreated Holy Mother,
Yeah, she was a child. Radhu was a young person, a child, and Holy Mother was so like a grandmotherly person, So, mother, remember, in spiritual hierarchy, the mother aspect is something unique. It's a very interesting thing. If you read Holy Mother's life, you find many people who came to her, they were not always great devotees necessarily. But by coming in contact with her, at some point they got some kind of enlightenment. That happened. That's true. Mother herself did japa for her own family members, as she did for even other disciples also. So in that respect, that is true. But Krishna was a different person, Krishna had to deal with all these evil men, evil persons, And second point is, if you want to know what Krishna would have said about Duryodhana and others, you find in the Gita, from the Gita you can find Krishna is expounding a very wonderful philosophy of action. So what it means is, no matter what you're living in this world, you do your duty. And the duty can be defined by your own qualifications, fitness, the compulsions of society, the situational interpretation of karma, contextual interpretation of karma, dharma, situational and contextual interpretation of dharma. So all these are deciding factors in deciding how to deal with a person or an evil. But the main point is, You do your duty. And if the duty involves fighting the evil, you should do it. But you need not hate the person behind that evil action. Because resistance against evil is a part of human responsibility, duty. But that doesn't include hating anyone. So Krishna never hated anyone. When he was friendly with everyone, but he knew who is who, what is what. So he gave a helping hand to humble devotees like Vidura and others, Uddhava in Bhagavata Purana. For Draupadi, she was the one who protected her. No one could protect her. She was the one who gave protection to Draupadi. He was the one who listened to the prayers of Kunti and consoled her when her 5 brothers were wandering the forest. When they faced dangers, he protected them. But he did not go and quarrel with Duryodhana. He was waiting because he knew that Duryodhana by his own evil deeds was deciding, moving towards his own ultimate destruction. So you find in the Mahabharata, you find Krishna is not in a hurry. He doesn't go and quarrel with anyone. He waits. But he knows this person's samskaras, tendencies, previous life, everything he knew. In the Mahabharata, there is a definition of Bhagavan. One definition of Bhagavan is Bhaga, Aishwarya, Samagrasya, etc. So, one who is endowed with Aishwarya, Dharma, Vyasa, Virya, etc. But another interpretation, more profound interpretation is, he is one who can see the past, present and future in one direction. So, there is no line of demarcation between the past, present and future. So, when he approaches a Duryodhana, he knows what he is heading towards, what is going to happen to him. So, he is not in a hurry. He can afford to smile even while talking to Duryodhana. People lose their patience when they deal with a difficult person. Because you don't know that he is actually creating his own destiny by his wrong deeds. We don't know that. So we get quarrel because we see only one dimension, the present. But Krishna could see his past and also his future along with present. So that's one definition of Krishna. That's why Krishna never cries, never complains, never doubts, never looks back, always smiling. That is a very interesting aspect. Sometimes I have found people, they want to depict the picture of a God is always happy, wonderful, fine, kind towards everyone. You cannot be kind towards everyone unless you are a well-trained diplomat. I mean externally. Because the nature itself has its own way of dealing with its problems. Nature. So, you can find in Krishna the supreme wisdom. That is, he never doubts anything. That's because he can see the past, present and future in one dimension. We worry, we doubt, we become angry, we become happy and unhappy because we see only the tip of the iceberg, which is only a fraction of the real thing, because we see only the present. Okay, thank you. Very, very question. Very important question. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami. I just had one more comment. The question about the diet, I'm reminded of Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah.
He used
Yeah.
And I remember even Swami Seshananda used to offer a cigarette during the Swami Vivekananda puja.
Yeah. These are all things related to certain specific cultural, civilizational, geographical factors. I tell you, people who define spirituality in terms of what they eat, They have a very limited interpretation and understanding of spirituality. What will they say about a great man like Buddha? I have put this question to people. What do they say about a great man like Christ? Or the great mystics in Christian tradition? They were certainly great spiritual persons. Rabbinical tradition or Buddhist tradition, non-Indian tradition. I think the only tradition in which vegetarianism came to be identified with spirituality later is India and Hinduism, religions of Indian subcontinent. Or in all other traditions, vegetarianism was unthinkable because it was not available. Right? That's an important thing to remember. Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Sri Ram, please go ahead.
You talked about Bhaga. The worker of the Chamaka we see Bhaga. Can you talk a little bit more about Bhaga?
Oh, Bhaga. Aishwaryasya samagrasya yasasa bhavasyeha. That is a Aishwarya, Samagra, Yasas, Virya, Tapa, Vairagya, Jnana. All these are different elements of Bhaga. Aishwaryasya, Samagrasya, Yasasa, Sriyaha, Jnana, Vairagya. All these are, see. Sharnam Bhaga Itirina. These 6 are called Bhagas, characteristics of Bhagavan, Aishwarya, Samagra, full comprehensive Aishwarya. Yashasa, great reputation. Sriyaha, great prosperity. The Jnana, great knowledge. Vairagya, renunciation. Okay?
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah, thank you.
Maharaja, the birds as messengers feature greatly in Sanskrit literature, in fact in all spiritual literature. So the crane, of course, is a great flyer, and it's very charming that the the interrogator, the prompter of this wisdom, these are the wise questions of a crane.
Yeah. To the form of a crane, yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you about in the evolution of Sanskrit, because this is an ancient text.
Yeah.
Is this, which phase of Sanskrit is the epic text that we're looking at here?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. It's a very puzzling question, because if you look at the modern books on the history and evolution of Sanskrit, very difficult to agree with that, because Mahabharata, Mahabharata is very modern Sanskrit, according to Panini's principles. Mahabharata Sanskrit is very modern compared to the Sanskrit of Rigveda, actually. Very, very modern. So that will compel us to place the Vedic times much more ancient than what is normally accepted among modern scholars. So there's a great difference between the way modern books on philology and linguistics talk about the origin of Sanskrit, its development, and the proof that we have right now regarding the antiquity of books like Mahabharata. Mahabharata is part, Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata, very, very simple, understood center. Many parts of Mahabharata are very, very simple. In Sanskrit, the literature, there is a tradition. The more ancient, some of the more ancient works are much more simple than compared to modern works. So if you read Sanskrit books, Sanskrit literary works written 19th century, 18th century, 17th century, they are much more complicated than Mahabharata, Gita and all these books, or Ramayana. So very interesting. Those ancient books were so simple. I think it is the opposite with regard to other literatures. If you read Shakespeare, Philip Sidney, or the ancient Christopher Marlowe, the language is not as simple as modern English, English literature. In modern English literature is very, very simple. So, yeah, so.
Yes, it's the reverse, yeah.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
the reverse is true in English language. Yeah.
One more quick question, Maharaj. Why did it take all the way to the 17th century to receive a full commentary on such an important epic?
Yeah, that I think there were smaller partial commentaries, but this Nilakantha was the one who wrote a complete commentary. That is a distinct contribution. I think he lived in 1620 and up to, yeah.
So in other words, it's a remarkable accomplishment. That's
Yeah,
why it
yeah.
took so long.
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
such a singular thing.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, it's the only complete commentary on Mahabharata, called Nilakantha's commentary. He lived in Varanasi. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. We should conclude now. We can get.
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.